This is The Calling, a Family Life original podcast that features conversations with pastors who share about the triumphs and challenges they face in their personal and professional lives as they share the gospel. Our guest for episode 29 is radio host, author, and speaker Alistair Begg. Alistair is the former senior lead pastor at Parkside Church in Cleveland, Ohio.
In addition to hearing him on Family Life, 8:30 weeknights and 8 p.m. on Sundays, pastors in the Family Life listening area will be blessed by him as the speaker for the 2025 Pastors Conference, October 23rd at Family Life in Bath, New York. This is a free annual event for pastors. More details, you can find them at familylife.org/events. I'm Tim Powers. Thanks for listening to The Calling. Today's guest, Pastor Alistair Begg. Thank you so much for your time and for being willing to do this too.
Well, I'm delighted to do this.
2025 marks a big year in a lot of ways, but I want to say first, happy anniversary. I understand August marks 50 years. You and Susan married?
That's absolutely correct. Yes, as staggering as it sounds, it's true. 50 years. She's a very long-suffering wife, as you can probably tell.
There's something I've enjoyed asking both newlyweds and veterans of marriage, let's say, which is this question. I love to ask people, what trait of your spouses, so what trait of Susan's would you want to grow in the most?
I'd like to learn to speak less and listen more.
That's a tough one for those of us who speak, whether be it behind a pulpit, on a radio program, or on a radio show. But there's a gift in that. There's a wisdom in that. Well, that's the faithfulness of a marriage, but also just of service as well. I think about long-term faithfulness, and how also for you this year being concluding 42 years, am I right, serving as pastor at Parkside Church in Cleveland. And I know that there's so much that your flock has received. What do you feel like is the greatest thing you have received serving God's people?
Well, I don't know if I can figure out what the greatest thing is. There are so many things. I mean, it is an inestimable privilege to be entrusted with the responsibility of tending the flock of God that's in your charge, and the privilege of being a servant of the Bible and growing in your own knowledge of Scripture because of the responsibility you're given to teach others. I mean, it's a truism, but I think understandably so, that if you want to learn, teach. Because the only way that you're able to teach is by first learning, so that you have an understanding of what it is you're conveying. And so I think that I have probably grown to a great extent as a result of the responsibility that I had to encourage others to grow. And of course, along with that, the privilege of being in a place for a considerable length of time means, amongst other things, that you end up marrying the children of those whom you married, and that you end up, as was true in a couple of cases for me, fellows that are now in pastoral ministry, I did their baby dedication. And so you have the joy and the accompanying sorrows of living with people at the high points and the low points in their lives, because you have a ringside seat at the weddings, and you also have close proximity at the funerals. But for me, there's no greater joy and no deeper challenge than doing what I've done for essentially the last 50 years, although 42 of them have been here at Parkside.
My brother's a pastor, and he said something to me yesterday that deeply struck me, and it reminds me of what you just said. that the Word calls our Lord, the shepherd and overseer. He is our shepherd, which is what a pastor is. And it sounds to me like there is that unique way you enter into really part of what God feels for his children, the high highs and the deep, heart-wrenching lows, too, when you're there with them.
That's right. That's right. It's and there's no. I don't know that there is another calling in life that has the same diversity. I mean, if you are a surgeon, that's what you do, and you see the people pre-surgery. They don't see you during surgery because they're out. You see them afterwards. But you don't, in the normal course of events, go from preparing somebody for surgery and then going immediately to somebody who's graduating from high school and they want you to come to their thing, and leave that and then go and visit somebody who's just been diagnosed with cancer and they're in somewhere else. I mean, the amount of highs, lows, ups, downs, and ins and outs that are related to the diversity of the flock of God, if you're going to take it seriously, is like nothing else in the whole world. I mean, there's nothing else like it.
I have to imagine that with all that you know, being a pastor is going to bring, and with all that you don't know, I've got to imagine you could not have foreseen what the Lord would do with Truth for Life, the daily broadcast of the teaching that he has given you to expound. And I'm grateful. I'll say for one, Pastor Begg, personally, I'm working in a radio ministry that I grew up listening to. And your voice is one that I've heard for years, because Truth for Life has been on the radio, and it still is. What does it feel like to be looking at 30 years of what God's chosen to do through that ministry?
Well, I think it's profoundly humbling, Tim. I just came from Cedarville University yesterday afternoon and met with lots and lots of those young people who seem just increasingly young now, the older I get. But the unifying factor in them wanting to say hello was the impact of the radio ministry of Truth for Life. And that extends beyond the boundaries of the States. I mean, a couple of the young fellows were from missionary families, their parents still in sub-Saharan Africa, and they said that they were part of the Sunday evenings where their mission team would get together and they would be listening to a broadcast that has come from Truth for Life, and that was on a regular basis. Another fellow, the same would be true in terms of his parents who are in Lebanon, and then a number of fellows as well who also were the children of folks who were in the United States forces and who were listening to it there, as well as all the poor children that had to listen to my voice when they were being driven to school on a regular basis, and they didn't know whether they were listening to Alistair Begg or listening to Shrek, and but they're all there. So it's an immense privilege, and it's very humbling.
Well, I count myself privileged to be among the, as you say, poor children. Very blessed we are, all of us, truly, and God's just. I am, and I'm sure you are too, Pastor Begg, just grateful and continually amazed at how he is pleased to work through broken servants like us. That's the gospel, the grace of the gospel, and just to speak about the power of the gospel message for a moment here. Just today, I was listening to the full sermon from which the viral clip of the man on the middle cross comes from. And that full sermon being an absolute treasure, we will link to it in our show notes so people can find and access that. But the power and the message of the cross. And I wanted to talk to you about this illustration of the man on the middle cross. For anybody who doesn't recognize the clip we're referencing, it's basically an anecdote as only Alistair Begg could tell it, of the thief on the cross. And there will also be a link in the notes to that if somebody wants to see how that clip plays out. But I did want to just ask you about that illustration, man on the middle cross. What do you think about that sticks with people?
Well, I think what sticks with people is the immensity of the grace of God, because there is a phenomenal mystery in that situation that I didn't go into in that little piece. And that is that what was it that caused the one thief to say what he said, in contrast with the other thief who spoke in, if you like, an understandable way? Hey, if you are the Messiah, why don't you come down from the cross and get us down as well? The inference being, it's a kind of transactional notion. If you do this for me, if you get me down, then I'll believe in you. And that is, of course, that's played out on a daily basis by people who think in religious terms, whether they're thinking in terms of the scales of Islam or whether they're thinking in terms of the sort of preoccupations of a moribund Protestantism that has the idea that, if I can just increase the positive side here a little bit, I'm sure I've increased my opportunities. And so anybody who thinks that way is immediately caught off guard by what transpires with this man. And you have to say, and it's clear, that this is the initiating grace of God, that God opens blind eyes and God softens hard hearts. And the moment of insight for this guy is fantastic. He says to his friend, "Do you not fear God?" Do you not fear God? What's an interesting question. And the answer is, for most people, no, they don't really fear God. They've moved on from that. Do you not fear God? Then he says, we are up here getting what we deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. So somehow or another, the pieces of this jigsaw are falling into line for this fellow. And then in a moment of insight, he says, Lord, would you remember me when you come into your kingdom? They've put a sign here that says you're the king of the Jews. I don't know all about that, but if you're a king and you have a kingdom, and if you're going to the kingdom, I'd like to come to the kingdom with you. And Jesus doesn't say, well, we're going to have a conversation about that. Jesus says, today you will be with me in paradise, because he is the only one who has the keys to the kingdom. And it is grace that opens that point of entry.
Yes, only by the response of the man on the middle cross said, I can come. That is it, because it's grace distilled, really. So yep. I'm really intrigued and excited that this really powerful visual of somebody whose life didn't earn them salvation by any means, but professing, but not just the work of Christ, in the case of the thief on the cross, that the man on the middle cross has become a booklet, right? And with evangelism being the goal.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The folks at 10 of those, my friends, said this. I think that that little anecdote, which has had such a huge expose, has benefit if we were to do something with it. And I said, well, what do you want to do with it? And then they said, well, why don't we put it out as essentially an evangelistic tract and give it to Christian people in a format that they can then give it to their friends and their neighbors as an opportunity for them to read, or perhaps to read together and to ponder the message itself. And that's why in the piece that they have put out, it says the man on the middle cross, and underneath it asks the question, are you going to heaven? Are you going to heaven? And then instead of just trying to beef up that little piece that I did, we decided, well, let's add to that 2 other amazing stories of the grace of God that caught people off guard by the magnificence of the compassion and kindness of Jesus. And that's why we decided, well, let's take the woman at the well, and then let's take the man who was let down on the bed because he was paralyzed. And so that's really what gives it a little bit of oomph, if you like. But these are only $1 each. And so you can get them from Truth for Life, and we're encouraging individuals to buy 10 at a time, or even 100, or churches to buy them and to use them expressly to encourage others to consider that question: are you going to heaven?
And it's an every man and every woman kind of approach, because it's meeting somebody and saying, look, what if you know you have nothing to offer God? How would you know that you could be saved? I find that profoundly beautiful. I wonder this, and this is maybe a little bit technical for the preaching craft, but I'm always intrigued by anecdotes and illustrations that pastors use. I got the feel like it feels like it's just in the moment, but I know a brilliant presenter has so many ideas, maybe even ahead of a sermon or a talk that they give. Did Man on the Middle Cross come to you ahead of time? Did you know you were going to share that anecdote the way you did during the sermon where it first was shared?
Well, no to that question. No, I did not. I did not have that written into my script for that address from the message of the cross. But it is also true to say that I have had that notion in my mind for a long time, because I think in those graphic terms. And it was actually in that particular setting, I went there, and not everybody would understand this, but I went there out of a sense of frustration, that I felt that I was laboring to get to grips with this immense transaction that takes place, that Jesus takes our punishment in order that we might enjoy his forgiveness. And I wasn't finding it an easy evening in terms of just the delivery. And so it was sort of, I went off on that in an attempt, if you like, to try and drive the notion home, never thinking for a moment that would become what it just became, because people picked up on it as they did.
Well, I have to thank you for the entire message, because the clarity with which you boldly, like Paul, proclaim Christ crucified, foolishness to the Greeks and weakness, to the Jews, and the message of the central message of the atonement on our behalf, being something that it's a bit frightening, honestly, in the state of some areas of the church today, to see how that can be backpedaled, or that can be transformed into something that isn't a call to fling ourselves on grace and grace alone. So I appreciated the great clarity with which that entire message, from truly beginning to end, made that clearly the anchor.
Well, I appreciate that encouragement. And I think, yes, I mean, it would be a dreadful thing if people were to take from the way in which I did that I was somehow or another seeking to downplay what you're just mentioning. There was no sense in which I was seeking to do that, or that somebody might. And I'm sure some would respond in this way, that why would you appear to be creating humor out of something that was clearly not a humorous situation. And yet, that's again where the moment comes into play, and the motivation of one's heart, and the ability that one is given to do certain things, and somehow or another in all of that, there we have it.
Yes, well, and of course, God works through the ways we communicate and understand and hear each other as humans, and I think humor is a terrific gift if somebody has it. I typically don't tend to be blessed in that way, but frequently I find that it's a helpful way of driving a point, of rallying an audience, of bringing together. So I'm grateful you use that, and many pastors do find that that's part of preparing or delivering what they do on a weekly basis, which is, I guess, what I would want to maybe go to here, in the sense that the pastors' conference is something that happens yearly here at Family Life in our center in Bath, New York, and it's encouraging to me that I'm part of a ministry that pours back into pastors. We're absolutely thrilled that you will be encouraging the leaders of the flocks of our area when you are here, featured in the pastors' conference this October. So it makes me want to ask you, for those foot soldiers, for those pastors who might right now be feeling like either he or his church or his family might not weather this next season, what's a word of encouragement for that pastor?
Well, don't lie down on the grass. Keep running. It's inevitable that in the exercise of the ministry to which we've been called, since we don't wrestle against flesh or blood, but against spiritual wickedness in the heavenly places, that we would at least go through seasons and times where that onslaught may seem more vociferous than at other times. We may go through periods of barrenness, first of all, in our own souls, where we feel like nothing very much is happening, and we have to remind ourselves that there are seasons in the soul, in the way there are seasons in the winter. I mean, the beauty of the flowers in Bath in July will give no evidence of that in February of next year. It will appear during those dark winter months that nothing is happening at all, only to allow us to realize that although it didn't seem like much was going on, a lot was going on, otherwise there would have been no springtime. And so I think we have to be very honest with ourselves about where we are spiritually, and also the same is true in terms of our congregations. Many of the people who've been the biggest help to us, I mean, a fellow like William Carey, who labored for a long time before he saw any kind of fruitfulness, is both a challenge and an encouragement to us, because we will reap a harvest in due course if we don't faint, right? Galatians. And, we are prone to wander. We're prone to faint. In a world such as ours, where we might look around and think that people seem to be very successful. It seems to be going very well. Why is it not going this way for me? We have to set these things aside. We have to be very disciplined with ourselves. Cease from man and look above you and trust in God and just do what's right. And avail yourself of the kind of friendships and fellowships that will be of encouragement to you. I'm not sure that I'm a big fan of pastors' conferences, and I'm coming to one, and I've held one for years here. And what I mean by that is this: that many of them seem to cater to those who are very, very good at what they do. And those of us who aren't as good at what we do, then we come away from them feeling like this is a hopeless task. Mm. And so that's why, for example, we've focused for the last 25 years on basics, because, a golf swing is not easy, but it is straightforward. Marriage is not easy, but it is straightforward. Pastoral ministry is not easy, but it is straightforward. And so we can encourage each other to just keep on and keep on at the task. And if you end up going to the conference and you sit at a table and everyone's explaining how fantastic it is, you want to go away and hide. And then if you go to another table and they say, my deacons are driving me nuts and there's nothing happening and the offering is down, then you got to get away from that table as well, because you got the highs over there and you got the lows over here and you're just sitting in the bathroom by yourself crying. And so hopefully that won't be the case at Bath. Hopefully that we can exhort and encourage one another, and all the more as we see the day of Christ's return drawing near.
Amen. I love to see things that seem like bits of just the heart of who somebody is. And one of those for you, Pastor Begg, seems to be an ever-present ability to quote a hymn or a song, but especially a great hymn. Just as a bonus question, where does that come from, and is there one you go to most often?
Somebody here might say that there is one I go to most often. It's the product of my upbringing. That's the honest truth. I was always part of a singing church. When I was in a Bible study group that was all boys, we sang. When we traveled in the car as a family, we sang. And because I never had a television until I was 12 years old, I read all the time. And so I read books and I sang songs. And, here I am, 100 years later, and many of those things that were registered as a child haven't left me. I mean, I can lose my car keys, but I can't lose the lyrics of those hymns. And hymns for me, songs are usually masterful at their best, are masterful encapsulations of big theological ideas, and especially the hymns that were written for children. Cecil Francis Alexander wrote expressly for children. She wrote Once in Royal David City to teach the doctrine of the Incarnation. She wrote There is a Green Hill Far Away to teach the Atonement. She wrote All Things Bright and Beautiful to teach the doctrine of creation. And did a good job on it. And you can go down the hymn writer's journey, and you'll find that again and again we have those individuals, male and female, to thank for that. It's a bit of a disease for me, Timothy. I have to say, I need to repent of it, I suppose.
Not on the count of the rest of us. We're grateful for it, and grateful for God's children who He uses to write hymns, and those who He uses to be pastors and overseers of the flock. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Pastor Begg, for your great and your faithful leadership and teaching. It is a gift.
Thank you.
You've been listening to episode 29 of The Calling, a Family Life original podcast. Be sure to click the subscribe button to get notified when future episodes are available. And if you think others will be encouraged by this podcast, you can share it on social media. Family Life's original podcasts, such as the Parable Podcast, Therese Talk, Every Single Journey, If That Makes Sense, 10 Minutes With, and the Rise Up Podcast, can be found at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or FamilyLife.org. Family Life is listener-supported, and your faithful partnership makes ministry outreach through podcasts like this possible. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.